we're going.
And we are back, coming to you from Denver and Portland. We do the intro different every time. I'm one of your hosts, Brandt Tobler.
Yeah, and I'm Andrew Slater in Portland. I'm the one in Portland.
Yeah, he's in Portland. I'm in Denver. We're glad to have you back. Just do a quick favor. If you're listening to the podcast on iTunes or Spotify or any of that, please give it a 5-star rating, rate, and review. If you have any questions you'd like us to do on the show, leave them in the comments. If you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. And we will continue to keep putting out new episodes each week for you. And today's episode is a question we get a lot of the time. And it is, can I become a writer for a famous comedian?
Yeah.
It is a question. Well, if you're asking this question, you are probably not going to like the answers you get on this podcast. But
I think that question comes from people thinking like, I know I'm funny and I know I can write funny, but I just don't see myself either doing stand-up or being like a big star. Like I'm not charismatic enough or something. And so they go, well, maybe I could just write jokes for a famous comedian and then make a living doing that.
Yeah. It's a question I've got a lot of times. You know, it'll come in my direct message a lot on Facebook or Instagram. Like, hey, how do I become a writer for like Kevin Hart or something? And I'm like,
right.
First of all, if I had the answers, do you think I wouldn't be doing that right now? It just doesn't work like that. But I think you're exactly right. In my experiences, it's been people who think they're funny, but they're too scared, or I think it's mostly scared to try to perform. Or, you know, some people are older, or I get this one a lot. Well, I have kids and a family. I can't really become a comedian, but everything I have is really, really good, which is always kind of offensive to me that they skip over me. They're never like, hey, do you want these incredible jokes? They're like, these jokes are way too good for you. Can you hook me up with Seinfeld or something?
Well, that's the arrogance of it. And that's why it's the short answer is no, because here's the real answer. If you aren't already a comedian, a working comedian, and whose jokes are proven on stage, then the answer is no. No famous headliner or comic has ever bought jokes from someone who's not even a regular comic. They have to know that these work. You know, they have to see them 99.999% of the time. And it doesn't happen that much anymore, but if like you said, Kevin Hart or somebody wants to buy a joke or buy a chunk of jokes or wants to hire a comedian, it's because they saw those jokes on stage at a comedy club. And they either want to hire that person who told them or just buy those jokes and not hire them. So then there's some agreed upon negotiation or whatever, but it doesn't happen a lot. And if it ever does happen, it's because the comic saw the jokes working, not because the comic's like just taking submissions like they're Saturday Night Live or Jay Leno's show or something, like getting faxed in jokes every week. It's not the way it works.
Yeah. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I only know a few people that write for the famous comedians. And like you said, they proved that they were great. And then I think the comedian liked their style and thought their style could be a similar style to that famous comedians. And then eventually they got paid, but
because it makes sense, right? Like you wouldn't, put yourself in their shoes, like you wouldn't, if you're buying a car, you want to test drive it or something first, right? You want to know that it's going to work and that you like it. The best way to test drive a joke is to see it kill at a comedy club. And then you can just go, oh, well, I know for sure that's going to work. I just saw it murder at a club. You know, you're not going to take a bunch of notebooks full of potential jokes.
Well, and I think that if it works with me and you do it, then it really works for the celebrity. The celebrity's got to think, oh, these people don't even know this writer guy, because no one really has the writers aren't famous. If you were famous, you would get your own writer one day or something. But the thing I want to talk about is why people on our level don't accept jokes. And for me, the biggest thing is the one rule in comedy you just do not want to break is people thinking you're stealing jokes. And I've had people bring me jokes before, and I would say, where'd you get this joke? And they'd be like, oh, I wrote it or whatever. And then it's on a movie or something. And you can ruin the risk of, no matter how good, you'd have to bring me 50 incredible jokes. The risk of ruining your reputation, taking someone's joke is so high for me. Cause once your reputation's gone, you don't get it back.
Right. Well, and also for us, I think it's a little different because like if you're a celebrity comic, there's there's pressure to crank out a new special every year or every 2 years. Then it's like you could see the temptation or just wanting to buy material because it's like it's just I can't come up with the material fast enough for the demand. But for us, the fun part is writing and performing the jokes and getting them good, and that's like the craft of it. That's the whole point of doing it. And we don't have the Netflix breathing down our necks going, hey, when's that special ready? We need that special tomorrow. It's like we can take our time and build the new hour until it's ready and then try and go out and record it. But the fun part is usually writing your own jokes for yourself. That's the whole point of doing this. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. You, and that's the thing. Like, you work so hard on your jokes. I've had a problem. Well, you've actually sold jokes before. I've never sold jokes, but I've also not had that many options. But I would have a hard time selling a joke I'm really, really proud of.
Oh yeah. I think it would be really hard. And I think the more personal the joke is to you, the harder it is to sell. It's a lot easier to sell a joke, about Joe Biden. You have some good Joe Biden joke. That's easier to sell than it is a joke you wrote about your sister, or something. But I would say like I've sold jokes, 5 or 6 times. And usually, again, it's never like I'm like offering them out like, hey, any buyers out there today? I got this new joke. This one's going on the block. It's like, I'm sick of this joke. It's up for sale. It goes to the highest bidder. It's always someone who just goes, hey, I think this would work or whatever. Do you still do this or would you mind selling it or whatever? And I usually say yes, because the joke is old enough to where I've sold jokes where I forgot I even had that. Just the person remembered from years ago. And I go, oh yeah, I'll sell it.
It's great.
That's great.
I'll shit out of storage. That'd be like, hey, you got stuff out in your shed. Oh yeah, you can buy any of that. I don't even use it anymore.
The hard part is knowing what to charge.
Yeah, that was my next question. What do you charge?
I usually start at like $200. I tried to figure it out mathematically one day. I was like, well, how long did it take me to write it?
Mm-hmm.
How much do I like it? Whatever. One time I sold a joke that I had merch for, so I charged way more.
Yeah,
I think I charged like $500 for that because I was like, I have all these dumb magnets
with your name on them. I couldn't go with the joke.
And now I can't sell these anymore. If I'm not gonna, it's not gonna make any sense. So I had to price that in.
Well, that's another thing. Oh, go ahead.
Usually I'm only selling jokes that I don't do anymore.
That you don't want. Have you ever sold a joke and then wish you still had it? No. Yeah.
No. But that's a good tip that, like Gary Goldman said this when he was doing all those comedy tips, which you should check out too if you're interested in stand-up. But he was like, don't be precious with the material, which I think is so true. Like, don't ever think that like this joke is so good you're never going to be able to replace it. Like, you can always come up with something better. You got to believe that, or else there's no point in even doing that.
That's definitely a problem I've had when I was like, oh, I would keep this joke and I'd kept it way too long. I should have I should have put it out to pasture with nobody buying it instead of just keep telling it. But yeah, I think starting out, if you'd asked me, it's funny when we lived together in LA, a lot of times we'd have these conversations when we go hike every day. And I'd be like, man, I'm not selling none of my shit. I work too hard on it. And you're like, I'll sell my whole act now.
Do you remember what I said? I think I remember what I said. I'd sell it all for.
I think you said like maybe 50,000, 20,000.
No, 6. I remember it was $60,000.
Yeah. I was like, I think I said like $1 million, which is absurd now looking back on it.
Right.
But like, fuck, I worked so hard on these jokes. And you're like, man, I'll sell that shit tomorrow for 60,000.
Yeah, because I just was thinking like, all right, it would take me a year at least to come up with enough new material to be able to work again, at least just to get in, just like to do a half hour sets or whatever. So it would take me a long time. So I'd want like, and then like 60,000, that's like a decent year, like back then when we were talking, that was a better year for sure than I'd had up to that point doing comedy. So like, that seems fair, fair to me. But now I would ask for more, just because it's not just now I think of it like differently. And if you ever were going to sell your jokes, you got to consider this part of it is the way money is made in stand-up now. It's like it lives on the internet and can make you passive income for the rest of your life, right? So it's like, it's not just what you make touring with that material. It's like, well, how long is that? Maybe that joke's going to run on Sirius for 10 more years. And if you don't own that anymore, or they have to take it down because you sold it and the person who bought it doesn't want it out there, whatever, that's money coming from you too. And it's also a pride thing, because there's part of you that wants to go, hey, I have these, one day I'm going to retire. I'm going to want to say, or I probably won't retire. I probably have to work till the day I die. But one day I'll be old and I'll want to say, hey, look, I have 10 of these albums, and look how many jokes I wrote over my whole life or something. So there is an ego and a pride thing, but there's a number too.
Yeah. But to be honest, it's not that big a thing in stand-up, really. I mean, you hear about the famous people having writers, and I think, like Andrew said, they're super busy. And a lot of them have, I think, just lost touch with reality. And if they were to really write about their lives, it would be so unrelatable. Like, I mean, I love Kevin Hart and Chappelle and them, and I think Chappelle writes all his own stuff, but I know Kevin has a team, but I think he has real people, because real people buy tickets. So Kevin talking about calling Jay-Z from the private jet, it's going to be hard to find funny in that,
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, like Ellen had a new special and she literally called it Unrelatable, I think. And she made jokes about how she can't relate to people. But even then, beyond the bits she did about that, she had a lot of stuff like driving and slow in the fast lane or whatever, Priuses and all this stuff. And it was like, you're like hard to buy, because you're like, what do you mean Prius, And like, but then she had, people were writing, I think, for that too, or at least helped her work it out, so.
But if you want to be a writer, you need to be a comedian. And most people I know that have writers, like they started together. Like me and I trust Andrew. We've run jokes by each other. We don't write for each other, but I trust him. If I did become famous tomorrow, I would definitely have him help me, but it's just because I know his sense of humor. He knows me. It's so much of a process.
Common. Yeah, that's so much more common, is where you go, no, I'm going to write all my own material, but I'll bring in funny people to help me like shape it or something, and maybe pay them for their time. But you're not like literally going, like if you're Kevin Hart, he's not like going like, I want 10 minutes on, COVID-19. So you write 10 minutes on COVID-19 and you write 10 minutes on Trump and you write, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't think that's
some random dude in Iowa.
Right.
That's another thing that he doesn't know. Oh, this guy emailed me. I'm just going to. Right. So, I mean, this will kind of be, and here's the thing too, since we even, I know a guy here, a couple guys here that have sold jokes for for a pretty famous comic. And I was curious what he paid for them. And we'll play a little game. I'll let you try to guess. So, or what you would charge. So this guy, now I don't know if the kid knew when he was selling it that this guy was he opened his special with one joke, and then he used another joke. They were like, they're short one-liners. What would you charge for that?
And
it's a famous dude.
It's a famous dude, really famous.
Like, I mean, theater comic. Famous.
Wait, what?
He pretty famous, pretty famous. Rich. Rich. Owns a tequila company.
Okay, so
he's a very white guy, very white, likes skating.
Okay, so now I have a vague idea of how famous they are.
Okay,
all right, but if I were selling two jokes to that famous person, I would inflate it in my price and probably ask for like $1,000 for the two jokes.
Oh yeah, see, I think he got paid. I probably shouldn't be talking about this, but I think he got paid $4,000 or $5,000. But wow. I think the guy must have known what jokes go for, which shows what a good person that is, because first of all, if a famous comic asked me for 2 of my jokes and said 500, I'd probably follow myself writing them down for him. So
Yeah.
I have to think that he knows what jokes go for. But I'm always just curious about that, like what. But I think that I and
Well,
when he bought him, I don't think he probably knew it was going to be the opening joke for his Netflix special. That doesn't. When I threw that in, I guess that doesn't really count. But
it's hard to work that out, right? Because like if you think if you could do the math and you go, okay, if it's going to be on a special, Netflix is paying paying like $5 million for the special, but it takes this much for the special to be made. And so at the end, they'll profit X off of the special. Well, my joke will be 4% of the special. Well, 4% times what they're making. Is that what you get? But then they're telling the joke. So it's like it's hard to figure that out.
Let's say if you do a 50-minute show and you clear 500,000, so then
they're not going to give you
they're
not going to give you like 30 grand.
34, yeah. I guess depending on the joke, but it's in comedy circles. It's not really talked about. Everyone, before the internet got so big, everyone wanted to pretend like they didn't have writers, but now people have kind of had to concede that they do have writers. But I've never really been able to track down figures. People keep it pretty secret because I think part of it is if comics found out how much they're making, other comics would try to definitely steal the job.
Well, and also it's similar to like when you open for a comedian, once you get with like into the celebrity world, there's no set union rate for like opening. It's up to the generosity of the one you're opening for. And it's the same thing with writing bits. I mean, they're going to pay what they're going to pay, and you're probably going to take what it is that they're going to pay. There's very few people that are just going to walk away from Kevin Hart and go, nah, he doesn't pay enough. I'm going to go to the next celebrity comedian who's going to buy my jokes. I mean, it's going to be, one, you're doing it because you're like, I want the money. But then two, you're trying to keep that, let's be honest, you're trying to keep that relationship.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's a good gig if you can get it, but I think you have to be very, like in the inner circle, trusted.
Well, and the truth is, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
For me, if I became Kevin Hart tomorrow, I know who I would go to. And it's people that I trust, people I've done shows with for the last decade, some of my closest friends. And I don't care how funny Josh from Pennsylvania is in the email he sends in. He just has you don't want to say nothing's possible, but if you're not a comedian, even as a comedian, it's a long fucking 1 in a million shot to really be a writer for a famous comedian. But if you're not in the comedy world, you go write a book or you should do something else.
If you really are like, man, it'd be cool to write for a famous comic. The way you should get there is to try to become a famous comic.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you might, if you fall short, some of the people you started with, maybe they break out and they remember how funny you were. And, like just the fact is, like the more stand-up you do, the more places you are, the funnier you are, you're going to raise your chances for opportunities at every level. And one of those opportunities might be writing for another comic, but it's just very rare. And it's not even worth really like pursuing or thinking about. It might come to you, it might fall in your lap, but
first of all, it's not a goal of any of ours, really. It's everyone I know that's a writer is kind of like, okay, they're established comics, been around for quite a long time, and they're kind of over going on the road. They're kind of over. They realize they miss their niche, because if you start performing and you're writing these incredible jokes, you're not going to want to give them to Kevin Hart. You're going to want to tell you're incredible. That's going to be. It's just like I think it's a myth, kind of like a myth or just a dream, but it's just not a thing.
Yeah. So I think it's like, it's a pretty short answer, but like, can I write for a famous comedian? The answer is not unless you are a comic, like a really good comic.
A really good comic.
And so my answer would be just go become a comic and then see what happens then. But there's no shortcut. There's no like, I think there's this vision of like the shy genius in their basement turning out gold and somebody buying it. That I've never really heard of.
Yeah. It's just not a thing. Unfortunately, you got to work hard, and have luck, and there's so much into this shit.
That's a great sentence for this podcast, but unfortunately, you've got to be a comedian.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Unfortunately,
you have to go through all the bullshit we've been through. We wish we could give you the shortcut. You could skip all these videos, but after we tell you all this, we'll just tell you now, you're going to have to go through a lot more shit. And but maybe anything's possible, but this one's not really possible. So
unfortunately,
find another dream.
You got to be a comedian.
You got to be a comedian.
I know it sucks. I know it hurts. I know it's not what you want to hear, but you have to do it.
You have to do it. You have to suffer with us. All right. I think we answered it, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Else? It's kind of,
let us know if we missed something.
If you have more questions, leave them in the comments. But I'm just racking my brain here. This is going to be a short one, but it's just when I was looking over the questions today, I was like, oh, that's something everyone asked, but it's really, when I give the answer in public, it's like, nope, sorry.
Well, and I think it is fascinating. Like, what does a joke go for? Like, what is it worth?
Yeah.
They say that Jay Leno had it figured out, like down to the dollar, what each joke was worth to him. You know,
what he would pay?
What he would accept. And because in his mind, if he does it on TV, it's like, this is how much money I would need to do this, because this joke earns me this much on the road. So I'm not going to do it on TV unless it's, he had that all figured out.
Which is crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. No one's ever really tried to buy my jokes, which is a bad sign. I guess I should write better jokes, but I also just don't think I would sell like the ones you've sold that you don't even use. But if you try to come buy something out of my act right now, I'd be like, there's a price on anything, but I don't know what it would be.
Yeah, there's a number for me for sure, especially right now. But
there's especially now that we're not. You can actually have a whole act, because when we come out of COVID, I'm not going to remember any of it.
No, but there's definitely a number. But yeah, it would be harder to sell something.
Yeah, it's just and I touched on it a little bit. Again, if you don't know where the joke came from, it's really hard to, even like when you work with comics, a lot of people give you tags or try to help your jokes. And I'll take those from like Andrew or people that I've worked with a lot that I trust. But random comedians, sometimes I'm like, I've seen it backfire when someone's like, hey, you should add this to your joke. And you're like, oh, that'd be really good. And then you realize, oh, that's like the punchline of someone else's joke.
Right.
So it's just it's just something to be safe in this game. You write all your own stuff, and then you protect it. You don't want anyone else to even come near it or say anything like it. And you don't really sell it until you, like Andrew did, when you don't need it anymore, or you quit the game. But even then, there's been people that have quit, and then they're like, hey, you can take these jokes. And I've never said yes, because I knew they were going to come back.
Right. That's a whole nother episode, but nobody ever really quits.
Yeah. You just die. So don't take those jokes. Don't write your own jokes. You're not going to sell jokes. But if you're a great writer, write a book, right?
Yeah.
Write your own stuff.
Write a book, get a Twitter account, become, if you, be a hot Twitter person, that's the way to get writing jobs that way. But
make YouTube videos. In this day and age, you can be creative and release your jokes regardless of where in the world you are. You don't need to go on tour. If you can't go to shows, you can put the kids to bed and make 2-minute rants in the basement and become famous tomorrow.
Right. And honestly, that would be a way that you would get writing for a famous comic, not just, I don't know in what world people are doing this, but emailing them or whatever. Yeah.
Like Andrew said, you're going to have to build a very strong resume, and then get pretty lucky, really.
Yeah.
Because even
like
then,
everything else.
Yeah. Yeah. It's but if it's a career plan for you, I would just know you're really going uphill on this one. It's going to be really tough to do it without becoming a comedian. So just become a comedian.
Unfortunately, you got to do it.
Unfortunately, you're joining our crew.
It's the sad truth. All right, man.
All right. That's it for this week. Please subscribe, rate, review, do all that. And if you have any questions you want us to address, put it in the comments, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Perfect.